The story begins with a boy named Miyabi. He has dreamed of becoming an architect ever since he was little. From a young age, he has been fascinated by buildings and designs. One day, he starts playing a game that gives him the chance to bring his dream to life. He begins designing and building, putting in effort until he finally creates the structure he always imagined. It turns out perfect, or so he thought. Inside the game, a boy kneels before a girl and proposes. Miyabi watches them through his system window. Scenes like this have become a common occurrence in the game. The game is called Yume Sekai, a VR space where dreams turn into reality. It has become very popular in Japan. While many players enjoy the battles, Yume Sekai offers much more. It allows users to build and create freely, including complex architectural designs. Talented creators from around the world are drawn to its creative freedom. Miyabi is one of them. He spent all his free time working on his project. When he finally completed the structure he always dreamed of, it felt like his dream had truly come to life. However, it soon became a popular space for couples. At first, seeing couples everywhere bothered him, but over time, he got used to it. In real life, Miyabi is just an ordinary office worker. He finds it amazing that someone like him can create something in a game that brings happiness to others. He reads kind messages from users thanking him and wishing that he finds a beautiful wife too. Their words make him smile. He starts to feel proud of what he's built and hopes it continues to make people happy. Suddenly, a new notification appears. It looks different from the usual marriage reports. Curious, he opens it and sees it's from the game's management. He's surprised. They don't usually send updates so soon. The message thanks him for his architecture, which has helped many people find love. Miyabi feels awkward, thinking he's become some kind of Cupid. But then he reminds himself it's okay to be appreciated. He smiles again. The message continues. As a thank you, they want to invite him to a special server. Miyabi is stunned by the offer. The system states it doesn't require any of Miyabi's data, only his permission to enter. Creating new architectures in a new server is everything a creator would want. He presses the confirmation button, and a bright light immediately surrounds him. Glowing energy swirls and fully envelops him. Just before the light takes him away, an unknown yet powerful presence appears. A glowing message floats in front of him, wishing him good luck from the goddess of love. After some time, he wakes up in a different place. He rubs his head, feeling dizzy and confused, assuming he must have passed out. The way he entered the server feels strange and completely unexpected. As he looks around, he quickly realizes that the place is unfamiliar. It's not the same area as before. Suddenly, he hears someone shouting. Nearby, several armed bandits attack a woman, demanding she hand over all her belongings. Miyabi, hiding behind the tree, watches in surprise, unsure if they're real robbers or part of a game update. Everything feels too real. The woman's horse-drawn carriage has been stopped, and she stands up to defend herself with a weapon. Then she looks directly at him. Their eyes meet, and she begins making hand signals. Miyabi wonders what to do. Perhaps this is a new quest? Thinking it might just be a game, he decides to create a distraction. Stepping out from behind the tree, he shouts at the bandits. They all turn to him. The leader instantly orders his goons to kill him. Miyabi's expression changes as fear sets in. But before they can act, a loud explosion erupts behind the bandits. The woman from earlier now stands confidently with a glowing magic staff. She thanks Miyabi for the distraction, then slams her staff into the ground, sending waves of magic through the area. Light shoots from her staff and strikes the bandits, defeating them one after another. Miyabi stands frozen in shock. Suddenly, a small stone hits his head. Though it leaves no mark, his face turns pale. He looks at where it landed, confused. Did he really feel pain? That thought hits him hard. No matter how real this world seems, it's supposed to be a game. It shouldn't be able to hurt. He looks up at the sky and surrounding mountains, and the feeling only grows stronger. This place feels more real than any game he's ever played. After the fight ends, the girl brushes dirt from her hands while the defeated bandits sit tied up nearby. She says they should be turned over to the city authorities. Smiling at Miyabi, she realizes she hasn't introduced herself yet, and tells him her name is Liz, apologizing for getting him involved. Miyabi smiles back, saying it's no problem. Unexpected things happen. He introduces himself and says it was an incredible fight, admitting it's the first time he's experienced anything like it. Liz looks surprised and asks if it was truly his first battle. When he confirms, she asks whether he's an adventurer or just a regular person. Her expression shifts as she pulls her cloak tighter, apologizing again. She had assumed he was experienced due to his confident posture and high-quality clothing. Miyabi also apologizes for not explaining earlier. Once they clear things up, Liz asks if he's heading toward Angelum and suggests they travel together if they're going the same way. Miyabi smiles, grateful, and says she would be a big help since he's feeling lost. He politely asks her to stay nearby a little longer as he has something to take care of. Liz, slightly confused, agrees but says she can only wait for a short while. As Miyabi walks away, she warns him not to go too far. He thanks her and promises to return soon. Wandering through the forest, Miyabi gathers a pile of sticks, leaves, and stones, saying it should be enough. He thinks back to his attempts to remove the VR helmet, which have failed. Even Liz seems concerned. Realizing he needs to act carefully, he recalls reading a strange letter in his in-game inbox before losing consciousness. He figures he should think things through and suddenly remembers the inventory system. He tries the usual gesture from Dream World to pull it up, but nothing happens. Thinking it might work differently here, he sits down, closes his eyes, and says, "Inventory," in his mind. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a quiet space filled with shelves. Surprised, he starts inspecting the area and finds the items he collected, branches and stones, placed neatly on the shelves. This gives him hope. He tries crafting and combines the items. A large table appears before him, and he gasps in excitement. The system now allows automatic crafting, making it easier than before. He thinks of an item and instantly sees its recipe. He tries crafting a shovel, which works smoothly. Encouraged, he decides to craft a stone axe next, useful for both gathering and self-defense. He checks the recipe, 10 branches and 30 stones, and realizes he likely has enough. He gathers the materials from his mental inventory and completes the axe. Walking up to a tree, he tests it. With just a few swings, the tree falls and the wood is automatically added to his inventory. Satisfied, he smiles, glad the system still works, even if the world feels unfamiliar. With a cheerful grin, Miyabi feels he's starting to understand how this world works. He begins imagining the life he could live here, gathering materials, crafting tools, and going on peaceful adventures. In his mind, he already sees a simple, happy future. A home he builds himself, a loving wife, and a smiling child at the door. For him, this world feels like a place where dreams can finally come true. When he returns from the forest, he sees Liz preparing to leave and quickly calls out, asking her to wait. As he approaches, Liz turns and gently scolds him for taking so long. Then she notices the stone axe in his hands, looking shocked and slightly nervous at how happily he's holding a weapon. She questions his smile, clearly uneasy. Realizing he got carried away, Miyabi quickly adjusts his expression and explains awkwardly that he thought the axe might be useful as a weapon. Liz tenses up, admitting she's a little scared. She reminds him he had nothing with him earlier and asks where the axe came from. Noticing her confusion, Miyabi calmly says he gathered some branches and stones and crafted it himself. Liz is surprised and asks if he really made it alone. She guesses he must be a craftsman and says it makes sense. No one travels empty-handed. Since he can craft items, she reasons he can also use tools and equipment. Miyabi, curious, asks if that means she can't use them. Liz confirms, explaining that, as a mage, she's unable to equip gear. Just then, 2 nearby knights who had been listening speak up. One suggests that if Miyabi is working like this, he should hire someone to protect him. The other adds maybe he simply can't afford it. Liz quickly turns to them with an angry glare, calling them out for being rude to someone they just met. The knights go quiet. Miyabi calmly assures Liz it's fine while she scolds the knights, quietly thinking they seem like normal people, but just a bit rude. He wonders if artisans aren't considered important in this world. One of the knights walks over, apologizes, and hopes Miyabi wasn't offended. Miyabi smiles and says everything's okay. After packing up their belongings and loading them onto the cart, Liz tells Miyabi to gather his things too. Once ready, they begin their journey. The road isn't long but includes small adventures. Miyabi studies the map and helps fend off a few monsters. They pause once to let an older woman in the cart rest peacefully. As they near their destination, Liz smiles and points ahead. The group looks up to see the city of Angoulême. At the gates, Miyabi stares at the massive walls and tall buildings, impressed by the scale and structure. Seeing the serious guards, he realizes this is a major city with strict security. As the carriage approaches, the guards surround them quickly. Startled, Miyabi nervously asks if they have done something wrong, but Liz tells him it's standard procedure. The guards focus on the captured bandits, and the commander asks for the leader named Liz. Miyabi assumes it's one of the knights and is shocked when Liz steps forward and shows her adventurer card. The commander checks, she's a C rank, and asks if there are 6 people in the group. Liz clarifies that Miyabi isn't an adventurer. When Miyabi asks if Liz is really their leader, the knights confirm it, explaining the highest-ranked adventurer takes the lead. One says Liz has helped them a lot, and another praises her ability to locate enemies, making her blush. Embarrassed, Miyabi apologizes for doubting her and admits he didn't expect the leader to be a girl, but now sees how skilled she is. Liz turns away, blushing more, while Miyabi quietly laughs, finding her shyness cute. A guard announces the bandits will be taken away and tells Liz to claim the reward at the Adventurers Guild. She agrees. The older woman thanks everyone, and Liz says she can now safely sell goods. One knight says goodbye, assuring Miyabi and Liz they'll be fine from here. After the knights leave, Miyabi suddenly remembers he needs an ID to enter the city. Liz asks if he lost his, but Miyabi says he never had one. Shocked, Liz tells him he'll need a temporary permit, which costs 5 bronze coins. He replies that he doesn't have any money either. Stunned, Liz falls silent as Miyabi jokes with a thumbs up that he must be a rare case. No ID and no money. Suddenly, he dashes to the guards, joking that something heavy is about to hit him, and that if Liz is left unchecked, Angela might fall into chaos. Frustrated, Liz grabs his collar. With a sigh, she hands him a temporary permit, valid for 3 days, and tells him to register for a proper ID at the Adventurers Guild if he plans to stay. Later, as they walk through Angelim's quiet streets, Miyabi sincerely thanks her for the help and the money. Liz reminds him it's a loan and she'll make sure he pays her back. Miyabi agrees. She had given him 2 conditions earlier. The first is to register at the Adventurers Guild. Miyabi figures this helps her keep track of him and maybe form a party. He decides his next step is to gather crafting materials as soon as possible. After agreeing to register at the Adventurers Guild, Liz tells Miyabi there's one more condition. He must help a girl with some tasks first. As they walk through the bustling streets, Miyabi admires the buildings, especially a real blacksmith shop. He keeps getting distracted, but Liz calls him back each time to keep him focused. He apologizes, thinking that even if he's not suited for battle, he could still be helpful in a support role. While he's distracted again, a bearded man quietly takes notice of him. Eventually, they arrive at a small building. Miyabi, confused, asks if they're not heading straight to the guild, but Liz explains that the first rule for adventurers is to secure lodging early, as cheap inns fill up fast and her bags are heavy. At the front desk, the receptionist says a night costs 5 silver coins. Miyabi uses the coins Liz loaned him and pays, heading to his room while thinking it feels as expensive as spending 5,000 yen. He estimates a gold coin equals about 1,000,000 yen, and recalls spending 5 copper coins to reach the city. He still has 2 gold coins left, but owes Liz, who, despite being younger, is an experienced adventurer and a bit tough to deal with. Still, he's grateful and knows he must repay her. The night passes quickly. The next day, he heads to the Adventurers Guild and is amazed to see beast folk and elves, creatures he's only known from games. Everything feels surreal. Liz notices his awe and comments that all guilds look similar, then asks if it's his first time. Miyabi smiles, saying he's from the countryside and hasn't seen much. Reassuring her that he's fine, he follows her to report the escort mission. A graceful blonde woman named Eleanor greets Liz warmly and thanks her for completing the job, reminding her to take care in the colder weather. Liz smiles in return. Miyabi is stunned by Eleanor's beauty as she turns to him and asks who he is. Straightening up, he confidently introduces himself, explains that he's registering and is helping Liz. He bows politely, saying it's a pleasure to meet her. Eleanor thanks him for supporting Liz and introduces herself as guild staff. Liz teases him, asking if his nose just grew. Caught off guard, Miyabi says he was just being polite and wonders if he said something wrong. After the brief moment, Eleanor turns to Liz and takes her adventurer card to review her quest status, then hands Miyabi a registration form. He takes it eagerly. Though the letters look unfamiliar, he understands them somehow, and wonders if it's due to how he was brought into this world. The form explains there are 7 adventurer ranks, which increase based on quests and contributions. The adventurer card also serves as a bank card, allowing money to be stored safely, which Miyabi finds much more convenient than carrying cash. A section about teamwork catches his attention. He hadn't expected adventurers to follow such structured rules. While he's lost in thought, Liz nudges him and reminds him to read everything carefully. Miyabi tells Liz he's already read the contract, explaining that his old job taught him the risks of ignoring fine print. It reminds him of his past, and he knows better now. Liz laughs, saying most people she knows skip contracts and claims she's the only one in her group who reads everything. Miyabi raises an eyebrow, thinking she's exaggerating, but Eleanor's calm expression makes him reconsider. Eleanor gently thanks him for taking it seriously and says Liz understands the importance, even if she doesn't show it. Miyabi gives a small, awkward smile, realizing she's probably right. As he signs the form, his thoughts drift, aware that Liz has likely been through more than she lets on. Suddenly, Liz stops him mid-signature. Confused, Miyabi panics when he sees he's written his name in Japanese, afraid he's exposed himself. But Liz remains calm and simply points to the specialization section, asking him to write assistant. Hesitating at first, Miyabi waits for something to go wrong, but nothing happens. Liz casually explains that adventurers often struggle with gear upkeep during long missions, so assistants are essential. They usually help temporarily, and she asks if he agrees. Relieved, Miyabi nods, realizing no one finds his language strange. He asks if that means staying at the back during fights. Liz confirms but adds that his job, cooking, collecting water, and maintaining camp, plays a crucial support role. Miyabi initially thinks it sounds simple, but Liz reminds him that even the strongest fighters need comfort. He begins seeing the value in support work, understanding that his efforts allow others to stay focused. A quiet sense of purpose starts to grow in him. Liz then picks up a pen and says she'll sign him up as her assistant once the current person is done. She yawns, saying she's handing the documents to Eleanor for processing and is too tired from the last mission to handle more. Miyabi agrees to take over, and Liz smiles, encouraging him to do his best. Later, Eleanor gives Miyabi his adventurer card and asks if he has a temporary permit. He opens his inventory and hands it over. Surprised, Eleanor says he really does seem like a craftsman. Miyabi smiles and suggests it must be rare for someone like him to join the Adventurers Guild. Eleanor agrees, explaining that most craftsmen join the trade or production guilds instead. She adds that many are rejected from the Adventurers Guild for lacking combat ability. Outside the city, Miyabi walks through unfamiliar streets where every building looks the same. Standing in a narrow alley, completely lost, he realizes he can't remember where his hotel is. Panic rises as he notices he's been walking in circles, frustrated by the identical streets and overwhelmed as an ordinary Japanese office worker. He blames himself for relaxing too much earlier when Liz was with him. As he struggles to recall the hotel's name, the sun begins to set and he starts worrying that Liz might be concerned. Just then, he spots a short girl with animal-like ears, a neat tail, and a serious face approaching. She looks like a beastkin and carries a sword, clearly an adventurer. With no one else around, Miyabi decides to ask her for help. When he asks for directions, she simply says, "that way," which confuses him. He hadn't even mentioned the hotel's name. He asks if she meant her own hotel, and her surprised reaction makes him realize he caught her off guard. Feeling awkward, he quickly explains he isn't dangerous and shows his adventurer ID. She sighs and shows her own, revealing she's also an adventurer. Miyabi is surprised someone so young and cute has such a high rank, even higher than anyone he's met so far. Calmly, she points at him, says his name and rank, F, and calls him a lost adventurer, then proudly introduces herself as Mel, ready to help. Embarrassed, Miyabi thanks her. Mel asks for a clue, and he says he remembers being near the East Gate, though he can't recall much else because he was talking to another adventurer. Mel quickly asks if it was a girl, and when he confirms, she immediately gets it and starts walking. After a while, she points to a building and asks if it's the one. Miyabi is impressed when it turns out to be correct. When he asks how she figured it out, Mel explains it's the only safe hotel near the East Gate that allows even girls to stay. It has locked doors and no alcohol, making it ideal for low-ranked adventurers. Miyabi realizes Liz must have chosen it for his safety and thanks Mel again. She pats his shoulder and calls him F rank. But when he reminds her his name is Miyabi, she smiles and uses it. As she walks away, Miyabi watches her go, thinking she'll probably forget his name soon. Miyabi suddenly remembers something and tells Mel he wants to thank her properly, asking her to wait. Hearing the word thank you, Mel's eyes light up, and she agrees with a smile. Though he wishes he could give her money, Miyabi doesn't have any, so he decides to craft a gift instead. From his inventory, he pulls out a small log of wood he gathered earlier. Using a skill, he breaks the log into square wooden blocks, and one forms neatly in his hand, catching Mel's attention. Focusing his magical energy, he begins crafting. The block spins and gradually takes shape under his fingers, instinct guiding each movement. Carefully, he sculpts a small wooden cat with a cute face and fine details. Pleased with the result, he gently hands it to Mel, saying it's all he can offer. Delighted, Mel strokes the cat's head, smiling warmly before running off, clearly touched. Miyabi reflects that everything he once made existed only digitally, but this, something real crafted by his own hands, brought someone joy. That night he struggles to sleep from the cold. Restless, he walks the hall looking for warmth, but finds no heater or stove. His blanket isn't enough, so he decides to eat instead. To his surprise, he runs into Liz in the hallway, who also looks cold. He greets her, commenting on the temperature, and Liz hugs her clothes tightly, agreeing. He points to a nearby table and asks her to sit while he prepares breakfast. She nods and thanks him. A short while later, Miyabi returns with hot porridge and bread. Setting down the tray, he apologizes for the wait and warns her it's hot. As he hands her the plate, their fingers touch. Noticing how cold her hands are, he asks about it. Liz shrugs, saying she's always been sensitive to cold. She takes a spoonful of porridge and sighs in relief, admitting it's better than her morning. She explains she had an escort request the previous day and hadn't eaten, and though there was no wind, the cold kept her from sleeping. Miyabi sighs, saying he understands, and jokes about giving her an extra blanket. Liz grins and jokes back. If he gives her his blanket, she'll pay a silver coin each night. Miyabi laughs, calling it robbery. She then teases that if it were Tanya instead, he'd be much gentler on a cold morning, adding that many people complain about the cold nights. Not wanting to dwell on the topic, Miyabi changes it by suggesting they check some escort jobs. Together they head to the Adventurers Guild. There, Liz studies the request board, thinking over which quests are worthwhile. When Miyabi asks what she's looking at, she explains calmly that it's where the guild posts available requests. Liz tells Miyabi that the board in front of them displays quests for C and D rank adventurers. He nods, but then notices a tense group of people hiding nearby. As a staff member posts new request sheets on another board, the group rushes forward and grabs as many as they can. Shocked, Miyabi asks what's going on. Liz calmly explains that the other board is for E and F rank quests. Since the rewards are low and limited, weaker adventurers scramble to get the best ones. Within seconds, the board is emptied. A tired-looking boy lies on the ground empty-handed, then slowly gets up and says even the leftover jobs were taken. Miyabi watches in silence, sweating at the thought of how hard life is for low-rank adventurers without a team, quietly hoping Liz won't abandon him. Liz picks up a crumpled paper, frowning as she says the requests are now jumbled and hard to read. Miyabi scratches his cheek awkwardly, then steps forward to help, complimenting her by saying she's amazing. Surprised, Liz asks why he said that, but Miyabi quickly changes the subject and asks about the quest. Liz reads the sheet and says they should get started soon. As they prepare, an adventurer walks past and glances at their request with a bitter look, but says nothing. Miyabi tilts his head and asks what kind of job it is. Liz explains it involves calming earth sheep. Confused, Miyabi asks what that even means. Liz says the reward is good, but maybe people overlooked the request. It states that 3 earth sheep are causing accidents on the western plains. Miyabi reads the details and then asks if Liz is okay. She says she's just feeling a little down. He asks if the request is still available, and she confirms it with a sigh. Curious, Miyabi looks where Liz had been staring and spots Eleanor handing out request forms with a smile. It clicks. Liz must be a fan. When he mentions it, Liz quietly admits she wishes she could always be near Eleanor. Miyabi chuckles, saying she sounds like a middle-aged man. Flustered, Liz denies it and says she just wants to be like a little sister to someone kind. Miyabi still finds it a bit odd. When it's their turn at the counter, Liz asks to take the quest. Eleanor greets them with a warm smile, then reads the form and turns serious. She warns them the quest is harder than it looks. Many C-rank adventurers failed it. Though earth sheep sound harmless, they're tricky to deal with. Still, Eleanor approves the request and tells them to be careful. Her encouraging smile eases Miyabi's nerves. She wishes them luck and hopes he doesn't get hurt. Hearing her kind words, Miyabi finally understands why Liz admires her. He walks away feeling calm and motivated. Liz watches him closely, frowning as she mutters that Miyabi seems far too comfortable around Eleanor, especially for someone who usually struggles to talk to people. With a sigh, she says he really does act like a 30-year-old man. Miyabi chuckles to himself, thinking that deep down, he really is a man at heart. After some time, the group arrives at the western plains and stops near a river to rest. While Miyabi drinks water, Liz comments that even though he's a craftsman, he clearly has good physical strength. After filling her own bottle, she notes they've been walking since they left Angelum, yet Miyabi doesn't seem tired at all, which surprises her. He almost seems like a proper adventurer. Hearing that, Miyabi realizes he's not tired in the slightest and smiles, explaining it's probably thanks to his skills in gathering and construction, which improve stamina and reduce fatigue, something he's trained in for a long time. Liz is surprised and notes that mages don't usually have such skills, adding it's much harder for them to build physical strength compared to frontline fighters. She's not complaining or saying she needs a break, but she admits she sometimes envies what others can do and has learned to accept it. Miyabi sighs and says rest is still important for staying safe during a journey, but Liz quickly responds that she's not tired. Looking down, she quietly says she now understands why some people rush to finish quests, because if they don't return to the city before sunset, the gates close and they'll have to camp overnight. Miyabi winces, remembering how he used to work late and often missed the last train, walking home more times than he could count. Just yesterday, that was his life. Wiping a tear, he feels lucky to be in this new world with its challenges, but at least no angry customers or overbearing boss. Back then, most of his coworkers were older women with kids, and the stress wore him down, but now, for the first time, he feels a bit of peace. While Miyabi is lost in thought, Liz calls him back to focus, then shouts, "They've arrived at the Earthsheep's location." Startled, Miyabi looks around and asks where they are. They start searching and spot a calm animal munching grass. Miyabi points, asking if that's the Earthsheep because it looks like a deer. Liz laughs, saying that is a deer, but the Earthsheep is right behind him. As Miyabi turns, the deer nearby raise their heads, alert and staring in the same direction. A strong gust of wind blows and the deer sense danger, trying to flee, but a massive horn crashes into them as a huge beast with enormous horns appears. It's the Earthsheep, wild, dangerous, and terrifying. Liz quietly agrees and says these creatures are called roaring demons, so strong that even 10 soldiers might struggle to beat one. There are stories of them breaking down city gates. Miyabi reflects that roaring demons suits them better than Earthsheep. Liz explains their intelligence is the real problem. Taking them down requires teamwork like in their previous forest battle, and rumors say they target mages in the rear lines. Miyabi realizes it's too risky to test this, and Liz agrees the beast might charge him immediately. They decide to retreat and observe from a safe distance. Miyabi finally understands why guild members reacted that way to the request. This monster near the road would block all travel. Seeing broken cartwheels nearby, Miyabi comments they must act quickly. Miyabi then asks Liz if any civilians were harmed during the attack, and Liz replies that thankfully no non-adventurers were hurt. She explains that even though the creature is only blocking a road, the situation is serious because a nearby village depends on that route for supplies. Miyabi realizes the villagers must be suffering since nothing has reached them since the Earthsheep appeared. And Liz confirms this, adding they can't afford to fail the mission, and that even Miyabi, though just an assistant, must stay alert. Miyabi steps forward and agrees, there's no time to waste, and asks how they will monitor the monster, wondering if they should use magic or throw objects to grab its attention. Liz calmly explains that's not the right approach. They need to understand the monster's movement patterns. Miyabi pauses, thinking for a moment, then asks if simply watching it is enough. Surprised by his calmness, Liz admits that yes, understanding its behavior is important, but that doesn't mean they can relax. These monsters won't stop until their target is defeated, and even skilled B-rank adventurers struggle with them. Miyabi silently repeats her words, reflecting on how the creature keeps attacking until its enemy is destroyed, and wonders why they shouldn't just stop it before it gets the chance. Confused, Liz turns to him, unsure what he means, but Miyabi responds with a confident expression, clearly forming a plan. Deep down, he believes these creatures aren't prepared for something unexpected. Soon after, the two step into the open field, with Miyabi walking ahead and crafting something as Liz follows behind. Using 10 branches and 50 stones, he creates a small stone shovel, holding it proudly while Liz watches with tired eyes, unsure what he's planning. Miyabi lifts the shovel and begins to dig, while Liz grows uneasy, thinking that monsters aren't that simple. If digging traps worked, everyone would do it. She sighs and says they don't have the time or energy to dig large traps, but Miyabi keeps digging. She warns that staying in one place too long will attract the monsters, and just then, Miyabi's shovel hits the ground, and a deep square hole instantly forms beneath them. Liz is stunned as Miyabi silently demonstrates what he meant earlier, pressing the shovel down again to create a wide crater around Liz, leaving her on a small island surrounded by a pit. Looking at the effective trap, Liz falls to the ground in disbelief, trying to make sense of what just happened, as Miyabi calmly climbs up a staircase made from the earth. Still shocked, Liz quietly wonders if Miyabi had been a mole in a past life. But Miyabi smiles awkwardly, thinking to himself that he feels more like a loyal dog, remembering his old office job. He lifts a large object and gets back to work. Time is running out, and he wants to finish quickly. Taking out 5 plywood boards from his inventory, Miyabi covers the trap hole, carefully blending it with the surroundings, then uses magic to spread soil over it and another spell to layer grass on top. Noticing it still looks a bit unnatural, he casts a final spell to speed up grass growth, perfectly completing the camouflage. In just moments, his work is done, and he now stands proudly beside Liz on what looks like a completely normal field. Miyabi feels confident that the trap is completely invisible and believes the wild monsters won't notice anything has changed. With the final touch in place, he declares the trap ready, while Liz remains frozen in disbelief, whispering to herself that Miyabi did all of this in under 10 minutes. Something she can hardly believe. Cautiously, she stretches out her leg to test the ground, her body trembling, afraid the trap might already be triggered. Just then, the earth sheep charges closer, and Liz begins to scream in panic, her thoughts spiraling with fear and doubt as she worries the trap might fail and they might die, even fearing she could fall into the trap herself while trying to run away. As the beast's speed increases, Liz grabs Miyabi's shoulder tightly and breaks down crying, apologizing tearfully to every god she can think of for getting involved with Miyabi, pleading desperately for divine help, while Miyabi silently watches her, unsure if she has lost her mind. The earth sheep races toward them, roaring with terrifying force, and just when it seems it will strike, it steps onto the disguised trap. Instantly, the ground gives way, and the monster crashes through the plywood and plunges into the deep pit, letting out a deafening roar. Liz covers her ears, overwhelmed by the terrible sound and fear, and when the roar echoes into silence as the beast disappears into the pit, she screams again, shaken and disoriented. Miyabi quickly shields her with his arm, and as the dust settles, Liz yells at the monster to stop making noise, still trembling but slowly realizing the trap worked. To her disbelief, other earth sheep follow, falling one after another into the hidden pit, and Liz, still shaking, turns to Miyabi to ask if the monsters might eventually figure it out, though she tries to reassure herself they won't be able to detect the trap. Miyabi only smirks. Knowing the simplicity of the design isn't the key, the true power lies in the depth of the hole, which causes devastating impact. And as he looks into the pit, he's confident nothing that falls from that height could stand back up, certain the earth sheep won't recover or continue fighting. Miyabi remains completely confident while Liz, still tense, struggles to believe what she's seeing and whispers that this can't be happening. Miyabi simply stands beside her, quietly smiling as they both take in the results of the trap, and as Liz looks down at the unconscious earth sheep lying in the pit, she wonders how Miyabi managed to take down such powerful monsters so easily, something that usually requires a full party of experienced adventurers, leading her to question who this so-called assistant really is. Someone who looks so ordinary but proves to be unexpectedly skilled. Noticing her stare, Miyabi smiles and gestures happily, relieved she's unharmed. But Liz shifts the conversation to something more serious, telling him it's not a confession but a practical point. Pits won't be needed anymore, and she insists on going first to handle the remaining monsters, determined to teach them a lesson as she raises her staff and prepares an enormous ice spear, pouring more magical energy into it despite visible fatigue, wanting to deal a clean, powerful blow that won't damage the materials. Miyabi watches in awe as the ice spear crashes down into the earth sheep at the bottom of the trap, and Liz repeats the attack a few more times before stopping, saying it feels strange to win so easily since it's never happened to her before. As she collects the monster materials, Miyabi casually compliments her and Liz, overwhelmed, holds her head and admits she can't keep up with everything that's happening. While Miyabi remarks that true mastery lies in using one's skills properly, which Liz agrees with even though she still finds his abilities odd. Then she notices something strange. Miyabi is placing the massive earth sheep into his inventory one by one, and though he thinks it's normal, Liz is stunned and questions how he can store so much, reminding him that he already filled it with tons of earth earlier. Miyabi, puzzled, says she was the one who explained materials go into inventories, and Liz, though she agrees, just can't understand how his space is so vast, eventually giving up on the mystery and suggesting they take a proper break. The two sit near the river where they rested before, and Liz quietly eats a warm piece of bread, her mood improving as she happily says how delicious hot food is, while Miyabi, pleased, smiles and says he's glad she's happy, explaining that buying bread ahead of time and storing it in the inventory was a good idea. Curious, Liz asks how much his inventory can actually hold, and Miyabi awkwardly replies that he's not sure, but it's only about 1% full now, which shocks her. So he tries to explain that the inventory grows as his skill level increases. Hearing this, Liz asks about his level, but Miyabi realizes levels might not be a thing in this world, and explains that in his original world, skills grew stronger with use, and serious craftsmen naturally improved over time. Using the inventory every day would increase its capacity. Liz sighs deeply, which makes Miyabi nervous, and when he asks what's wrong, she explains that her understanding of craftsmen is completely different. While they can make things, the quality is usually poor. They build cheap furniture or fix city defenses, get paid little, and can't even leave the city without protection, since even weak monsters are dangerous to them. Sometimes craftsmen follow adventurers to carry supplies, but with limited inventory space, gathering materials becomes difficult and risky. Miyabi is stunned and stays quiet, thinking back to his dream world where gathering materials was never a problem. Unlike the craftsmen in this world who are stuck making simple furniture with no room to improve, he clenches his fist, feeling sorry for them but knowing he has his own problems to handle. So he gives a small smile and says, "Every job has hardships and making money is never easy," reminding Liz how she recently complained about the cold. Liz sighs and says adventurers face high risks, with only a few gaining fame or riches, yet they still have to keep moving forward. Miyabi feels the talk is getting heavy, so he shifts the topic by saying he might need Liz's help soon, and Liz looks at him, sensing something's wrong. Miyabi admits he knows he's in debt and may need her strength more than ever, then adds that he wants to collect wool from the earth sheep they defeated. Liz is surprised but agrees, explaining that she was planning to sell the valuable parts and throw the wool away. And Miyabi thanks her, noting that adventurers usually only take selected monster parts. He starts sorting the materials while Liz reflects on how useful the horns are for medicine, claws and bones for weapons, and meat for food, realizing this might be her most rewarding quest ever, and thinking about staying at a hot spring inn. Miyabi wonders if she wants to relax in a warm bath, and Liz agrees, saying it would be good for the body after the cold night. Miyabi pictures a peaceful moment with a girl warming up in bed after a bath. Then Liz suddenly says he won't be allowed to leave the team even after repaying his debt, which makes Miyabi feel flattered as he assumes she wants his help for future profits. And though he wishes she said it more nicely, he's happy to stay. Miyabi reaches out and shakes Liz's hand, saying teamwork means supporting one another, and Liz apologizes for being too focused on profit, but Miyabi reassures her it's okay. Later, they return to the guild, where Eleanor is waiting and asks if they completed the quest. Liz avoids eye contact and says they were lucky the monsters were alone, and Miyabi wonders why they can't just admit they used a trap. Liz quietly replies that as an adventurer, she has her pride, and Eleanor, though doubtful, smiles and says, "Luck is also a skill," glad for their success, then asks for materials as proof. Liz is surprised and says they haven't sorted the items, forgetting that Miyabi already finished organizing them. Miyabi raises a hand and drops a pile of resources onto the table, calmly stating they include claws and horns from 3 beasts and meat from 2. Eleanor is speechless, and even nearby adventurers stare in shock, while Miyabi apologizes for blocking the passage and offers to move them elsewhere. Once Eleanor recovers, she smiles and says it's no problem, beginning the evaluation and asking him to wait a little while. After a short moment, Eleanor quietly leaves the room, and the guild is thrown into a stir as people gather, shocked by the massive pile of earth ram meat brought in by Miyabi and Liz. One serious-looking adventurer stands confused, while warehouse staff gape in disbelief, some thinking it's a joke as whispers spread about earth rams and questions arise over how many were hunted. Miyabi watches the scene calmly but bursts with excitement at their results, rushing around while adults begin moving and organizing the meat. Curious, Miyabi wonders if mutton is that popular, and Liz, puzzled, explains it's tender, healthy, especially loved by women, sometimes even eaten raw, and must be delivered within 3 hours to freeze properly. Plus, there are regular buyers for it. Miyabi listens closely until Liz, looking shy, pulls his sleeve and asks to keep a piece for herself, not to sell at all. She says she'd never eat it raw, but wants to enjoy it later. Soon, Eleanor returns with a smile and a tray full of gold coins, thanking them for their work and announcing the rewards. 45 coins for the request, 60 for horns and claws, 10 for nails and horn pieces, and 85 for meat, totaling 200 coins. Both Miyabi and Liz are stunned by the amount, realizing it's equal to about 2 million yen as the gold reflects off their shocked faces. Liz suggests a 70-30 split, but Miyabi calmly insists on taking only 30%, saying he still owes her money and fears mismanaging it. Liz, frustrated, yells at him to take the larger share, pushing coins toward him and calling out how helpful he was, especially with the digging. Confused, Miyabi questions her tone while Eleanor watches amused and casually asks about the mole they're discussing. Both brush it off. Once their split is settled, they leave the guild, and Liz remarks how Miyabi keeps denying everything and admits she feels a bit embarrassed. Miyabi replies that he just wants to support her and doesn't think he deserves the bigger reward since she took more risks on the front lines. And even as he starts repaying his debt, Liz says she gained far more from his 30% than from all the money combined. When she asks how to divide future rewards, Miyabi suggests 60-40, but as they walk through the crowded city, Liz gets annoyed and tells him to stop arguing, while Miyabi replies calmly like it's just another usual part of their conversation. Inside the grand hall of the luxurious Tay Hotel, the hostess greeted guests with a bright smile, informing them that a night stay for one person cost 2 coins. Miyabi was taken aback by the price, hesitating as he pulled out his pouch of coins. Liz, however, seemed unfazed. She agreed with the price, quickly signed the documents, and then grabbed Miyabi by the arm, calling him her servant. She reminded him that these were necessary expenses. Curious, Miyabi asked where they were going. Liz turned around cheerfully, holding a wooden tub filled with bathing supplies, and told him they were headed to the hot springs. After their victory over the barons, they had earned some money and decided to take a short break to relax. The reward had been 200 coins, equivalent to nearly 2 million yen in Miyabi's mind, which made him feel that the hotel's pricing was on a whole different level. To him, upgrading from a simple inn to a lavish hot spring retreat seemed like an extravagant splurge. Calculating the cost, he figured that staying for a full week would set them back 8 coins, and he quietly lamented how expensive it all was. Deep down, he thought it would have been better just to rest in the hotel itself instead. As they entered the hotel's interior, they noticed a cheerful couple coming out of the hot springs, holding basins and smiling with satisfaction. Seeing this, Miyabi couldn't help but smile too. It reminded him of something familiar and comforting. He accepted a basin and towel, but before following Liz to the springs, he paused. Looking at her, he smiled and said he wanted to step out briefly for some shopping. Liz wasn't pleased by the delay and reminded him about the hot springs, but when Miyabi asked if she needed anything, she said no. He assured her everything was fine and encouraged her to go ahead and enjoy the bath without him. Though confused by his sudden burst of energy, Liz agreed and went off to soak. Meanwhile, Miyabi rushed out into the city, feeling that something important needed to be done. He reflected on how rare yesterday's mission had been, and how harsh the life of an adventurer truly was. The one thing that sustained life, especially in tough times, was food. Realizing they might not always be able to accept such profitable missions, he decided to stock up on provisions while they still had funds. His goal was to prepare fried ground sheep meat with vegetables in a pan. He hadn't forgotten the sweet and spicy sauce, although even plain salt would have sufficed. Soon he reached a food stall overflowing with various vegetables. He told the vendor that he wanted to buy everything from one end of the counter to the other. The shopkeeper, smoking a cigarette, looked at Miyabi with annoyance and told him to leave if he was just fooling around. In response, Miyabi extended a handful of gold and asked if 10 gold coins would cover the cost. The vendor's demeanor changed instantly. He was shocked, then quickly bowed and started packing everything into a box. Miyabi calmly told him not to worry, as he would store it all in his inventory. Next, he visited a spice merchant and asked for salt and black pepper. Initially displeased, the merchant also changed his tone the moment Miyabi showed the gold. The same happened when he stopped by a fabric seller. Reluctance turned into politeness as soon as money was involved. After all his purchases, Miyabi calculated that he had spent 35 coins, leaving him with 49 coins. Though the expense weighed on him, he reassured himself that it was a worthwhile investment. These weren't mere expenses. They were necessary steps for survival. Biting into a sandwich, he wondered where to go next. He strolled through the streets, searching for a particular merchant he vaguely remembered seeing around. The sound of hammering metal drew his attention. Following the noise, he arrived at a blacksmith's forge where sparks flew, and the air was filled with the scent of iron and fire. The forge was lined with an array of finely crafted weapons and armor. Miyabi was momentarily amazed by the display, walking through with a sense of awe. He approached a weapons rack and picked up a beautifully honed dagger, admiring the craftsmanship. He quietly admitted to himself that his own axe couldn't compare. Miyabi noted how impressive the blacksmith's work was. It made him reflect on the fact that while he was skilled in crafting items, weapon making was a whole different level. As he stood examining the dagger, the blacksmith called out to him. Miyabi turned to face the man, who then asked if he was a master of any trade. As Miyabi examines the finely crafted weapons, he strikes up a conversation with the blacksmith, who turns out to be a dwarf. Curious, Miyabi asks if the dwarf owns the shop and, at the same time, how he knows that Miyabi is also a craftsman. In response, the dwarf simply points behind him and tells Miyabi to observe the customers. The dwarf explains that typical buyers choose their weapons based on weight and convenience. Only craftsmen or passionate enthusiasts, he says, examine weapons with the level of detail Miyabi has shown. Miyabi feels a little embarrassed, unsure if he really looked that closely, and apologizes, explaining that he genuinely intends to purchase something and isn't just browsing. The dwarf chuckles and tells him there's nothing to apologize for. He admits that he too often inspects the work of other blacksmiths and sees no shame in it. Miyabi thanks him and says he's actually looking to buy a knife for self-defense. Then, as an afterthought, he adds that he's also interested in purchasing some iron ore. This catches the blacksmith's attention. He looks at Miyabi and asks for his name. Miyabi introduces himself as an assistant craftsman. The dwarf, intrigued, notes that Miyabi is both a craftsman and an adventurer. After a brief pause, he introduces himself as Weiss, a blacksmith by family tradition. When Weiss hears that Miyabi wants to make a weapon, his mood lifts. He says he likes that idea and asks Miyabi to show something he has previously made. Caught off guard, Miyabi stands across from the dwarf, unsure what to present. After a brief moment of hesitation, he admits that he hasn't made any weapons. Instead, what he really wants to create is a portable, magic-powered cooking stove. To craft it, he needs 20 units of iron ore and 20 cobblestones. Weiss looks at him with gleaming eyes. Miyabi explains that he's not trying to be impressive. He just wants a proper oven for cooking. The tone of their conversation begins to shift. Miyabi then offers Weiss the stone axe he crafted, apologizing for its poor quality but noting that he did his best. He hopes Weiss won't dismiss him for such an amateur attempt. To Miyabi's surprise, Weiss smiles warmly. He recognizes that the axe was handmade and tells Miyabi to follow him. Weiss leads Miyabi through a hidden passage into the working section of the forge. The workshop is busy and filled with energy. One man works intently at an anvil, wearing safety glasses and wielding a hammer. Miyabi looks around, amazed by the atmosphere. Eventually, they arrive at the ore warehouse. Miyabi is stunned by the massive supply of materials. Eyes wide, he asks if all the crates are really filled with iron ore. Weiss casually climbs into one of the ore containers while holding an empty crate. Miyabi has never seen such a stockpile before. Unlike games, here the materials are real and tangible. Weiss places a full crate in front of him and says it should be more than enough. He explains that he wants to support a fellow beginner blacksmith by sharing his resources. Grateful, Miyabi picks up a piece of ore and examines it with sparkling eyes. Then he pauses, asking how much the entire box would cost. Weiss laughs and jokes that someone who makes stone axes probably doesn't have much money, especially not an adventurer who usually struggles with funds anyway. Still, Miyabi insists on paying. While he wants to save money, he doesn't feel right taking it for free. Weiss waves him off and says not to reject generosity when it's offered. Folding his arms, he encourages Miyabi to show what he can do. He's curious to see what kind of weapon Miyabi will make from the ore. Miyabi thinks for a moment. His original plan was to build a magic stove, but he knows Weiss is expecting a weapon. Accepting the challenge, he decides to craft something he won't be ashamed to show. He resolves to do his best and not embarrass himself in front of the master blacksmith. Weiss, still holding the stone axe, comments on its unique edge. His curiosity grows as he watches Miyabi prepare for his new project. Meanwhile, Miyabi steps outside and quickly realizes he's forgotten the way back. Looking around in confusion, he feels a strange sense of déjà vu. For the first time, he truly appreciates the value of a map. He wonders if he has a terrible sense of direction and tries to recall the name of the hotel. As he wanders through the streets, fate steps in. He bumps into Mel. Overjoyed to see a familiar face, Miyabi greets her, while she immediately points out that the FR rank adventurer is lost again. Miyabi admits it and asks her for help, calling himself an idiot. Exhausted, Miyabi lies down on the ground. Mel pokes him with a stick, amused by the sight. Then she kindly agrees to guide him. Miyabi tells her he's staying at a different inn now. When he mentions the name, Mel is surprised. They're staying at the same place. Taking him by the sleeve, she says she's on her way back too and decides to walk him to the hotel. Mel and Miyabi stand together in the hotel hallway, and Miyabi is visibly thrilled that they've finally arrived. Mel stands confidently with her hands clasped, while Miyabi grabs her hands and shakes them energetically, thanking her over and over. Mel remains calm, but after a few seconds, Miyabi notices her expression turn cold. Looking down, he awkwardly asks if something is wrong, but her steady stare makes him realize she's expecting something. He guesses she might be waiting for a gift, and she happily confirms it. Relieved that he bought plenty of supplies earlier, Miyabi tosses a bolt of fabric into the air and begins crafting something special for her. As the cloth hovers, he channels mana into it, visualizes the design, and makes precise cuts. Then, using his crafting skill, he tosses up a thread, guiding it through the air with mana and hand gestures, stitching the fabric pieces together. His actions mesmerize Mel and the nearby hotel guests who gather around to watch. Soon, a cute cat doll takes shape on the table. Mel curiously asks if it's done, and Miyabi replies there's just a little more left. He needs to coat it in a thin magical layer and attach some fine sheep wool. Once completed, the fluffy doll makes Mel beam with happiness, while the crowd around them claps in awe at Miyabi's handiwork. A bit flustered by the attention, Miyabi picks up the doll and kneels before Mel, handing it to her as a thank you for guiding him. She hugs it warmly and thanks him by name, surprising Miyabi, who didn't expect her to remember. She casually adds that she only remembered now, which he chooses to believe. As Mel heads upstairs, Miyabi waves at her, feeling confident that she truly liked the gift and won't forget his name again. Just then, Liz steps out of the bathhouse, drying her damp hair from the hot springs and greeting Miyabi. He's shocked to see her, and she asks if someone had come to visit him, saying she heard a loud voice earlier. Miyabi denies it, though Liz seems skeptical. She doesn't push further. When he asks if she's been at the hot springs the whole time, Liz replies that she's gone 3 times, looking refreshed and content. She confirms that the hot springs are incredibly relaxing. Miyabi, trying not to get flustered by her appearance, reminds himself not to fall in love and calls himself foolish. He notes that Liz doesn't act like someone her age. Liz jokingly tells him to go to the springs too, thinking he must be freezing from being outside so long. She touches his cheek with the back of her hand and smiles, confirming with a laugh that he really is cold.
Here I am.